G'day and welcome to episode 1 of A Pirate in Chains. Now this might not be the first episode you've seen, but it definitely is episode 1. Because today we're here at Point Puer, across the bay from Port Arthur. And it was in 1842 that James Jimmy Harrison arrived here, officially at the age of 14, but he probably could have even been even younger than 12. As by now you would have already worked out if you watched some of the other videos, or you will if you watch these videos in chronological order, that Jimmy was a bit of a rebel, always bucking against authority, always trying to do things that the system didn't want him to do. That's been a bit of a theme in my career as well, and I'm wondering whether it might be genetic. On the 10th of August 1842, the Elphinstone arrived here at Port Arthur and unloaded the boys. They were then placed under the administration of the Commandant of the settlement, Captain Charles O'Hara Booth, who resided in this cottage behind us. Then it was off to Point Puer. Today's travellers to Port Arthur by sea do so in a little bit more luxury than Jimmy did on the Elphinstone back in 1842. Point Puer was the first dedicated boys' prison, children's prison I guess, in the British Empire, and was seen as a huge development at the time, taking children out of adult prisons, but taking young people as young as 9 years old and shipping them off to the other side of the world. Maybe not the most enlightened in the end. But I guess the most enlightened thing about Point Puer was that it was actually set up as an education facility. The boy prisoners were taught how to read and write, and they were taught a trade. In fact, maybe you could say that this was the first trade training centre in Tasmania. But I think the school culture might have been a little bit different to the trade training centre that I led. So James was taught carpentry, but he didn't perform particularly well. His instructor said that he had poor coordination and could not earn a living from the trade. Oh well, what else was he going to do for the next 17 years of his life? For the first 17 months in his time here at Point Puer, James behaved well, undertaking his carpentry lessons, but his report on his actual skills in carpentry weren't great, and maybe the frustration at that started to get to him, because on the 18th of March 1844 he received the first of the many punishments he would receive over his convict career. 25 stripes on the breeches for disobeying orders. Ouch. When you arrive at the gallery at the Port Arthur Visitor Centre, you get a choice of choosing a playing card, and each card equates to a character in Port Arthur's history. Just my luck, I picked out Marcus Clarke. Now, I've got a bit of a history with fiction writers pretending to change history to suit their purposes, because Marcus Clarke was a very passionate anti-transportationist, and his most famous novel, For the Term of His Natural Life, made into a movie in 1927, featured a scene where two poor boy prisoners at Point Puer couldn't survive any longer in the terrible, terrible conditions and had to jump and commit suicide off the cliffs behind me. That never happened. No boy ever committed suicide at Point Puer. And in fact, the boys used to scramble down the cliffs and go fishing. They'd get in trouble for doing so, but they weren't trying to kill themselves. But anyway, just like Mr. Flanagan and his fiction that he writes about pretty much everything, including his so-called factual novels about salmon farming, Marcus Clarke achieved great success with his work, and it went on to influence the government to lobby to cease transportation. In my first year at university, I undertook Australian history, and one of the essay tasks was an analysis of Marcus Clarke's For the Term of His Natural Life. And I remember writing about the suicide scene at Point Puer and comparing it to the life of James Jimmy Harrison. And I said that in fiction, two little boys couldn't cope and had jumped to their deaths. But in reality, James Harrison spent, and spoiler alert, spent another 17 years in captivity. My lecturer, Professor Michael Rowe, wonderful man, Australian historian, commented on my essay, saying that my statement about Point Puer was verging on profundity. Only gave me a B though. On 1 July, James might have been clambering down those cliffs because he was found AWOL and received another 30 stripes on the breeches. And only the next day, he was found being insolent and was spent the first of his many time in solitary confinement, this time 1 week. And the very day after his release from solitary, he assaulted another boy and got another 50 stripes on the breeches. And on the 23rd of August, he received another 2 weeks solitary. The conduct record only says it was for misconduct, so we're not exactly sure what he did, but maybe it's just because it was escalating that they gave him 2 weeks instead. And it was this time that his conduct record notes that James Jimmy Harrison was a very bad boy. And basically, they'd had enough of him. They kicked him out of school. He'd spent 2 years, 3 months and 2 days here at Point Puer. And where they sent him was where nobody wanted to be sent. So it's time to leave Point Puer because we're off to the coal mines. On the 11th of November 1844, James was transferred from Point Puer to here, the convict coal mines at Saltwater River. James was apparently 16 at the time, although later in 1851 on Norfolk Island he was declared to be only 18, so maybe with all the confusion about ages he might have been even as young as 12. The coal mines wasn't just any normal probation station or prison location. The coal mines was where the worst of the worst was sent. And even at the time it must have been pretty unusual for a young kid straight out of the boys' prison to be sent here amongst the worst of the worst. This is the main shaft of the coal mines here. The coal mines operated under the convict system from 1834 to 1848, so only 12 years. But after that they were passed into private ownership, and apparently they kept operating until about the 1870s. The coal that they mined here at the coal mines, just near Saltwater River, it's not particularly good quality coal, but it was good enough in the absence of anything else. And whereas our previous Prime Minister Scott Morrison said we shouldn't be afraid of coal, the prisoners were very afraid about being sent here. Now these cells were not solitary cells, but separate cells, and they were designed to solve another so-called problem. And that problem, believe it or not, was the prevalence of homosexuality amongst the prisoners. Happens in every jail, I guess, but in oppressed conditions like this, you can just imagine how the power might have been used. So these are the convict barracks, and pretty fancy, being that they're made of stone. These buildings were made in 1837, which was 3 years after the coal mines opened. I'm presuming that each of these was a cell for God knows how many people. So the cells below us are indeed solitary cells. And on the 5th of January 1845, for insubordination, young Jimmy was sentenced to 30 days in one of those cells. Just imagine it, 30 days locked up in that space. No thanks. On the 6th of February 1845, his 30 days in solitary at the coal mines completed, James boarded the packet ship Swan River here at the jetty at Plunkett Point and sailed for Hobart towards the prisoners' barracks, where he would begin his stages through the probation system. Maybe it was being labelled a very bad boy at Point Puer, and then at the age of only 16 being sent here amongst the worst of the convicts in the depravity and hellhole that was the coal mines. Maybe that labelled James, or Jimmy, because the next few years of his convict life, things didn't get any better. But to find out about those, you're going to have to watch the next upcoming episodes. So if you've enjoyed this one, please click like, please subscribe, and yeah, we'll see you sometime next time along the road of a pirate in chains. Thanks for watching. Plunkett Point. Harrison and Plunkett. It'll be a very long time, I reckon, before those names are ever linked together again. No unauthorised access, eh? Wonder what Jimmy Harrison would do. Probably exactly the same as I'm going to do. In 1844, James Harrison broke out of here. Who would have thought 180 years later that his great-great-great-grandson would be breaking in?